Today's session is entitled Winning Recognition, the Power of Awards for Your Agency. But we'll go right beyond that, to be honest, and we'll talk about the strategic value of awards and how to win them. We've got four very different perspectives and four wonderful speakers on our panel. We have an award-winning agency, which is a good start, an awards organizer, an awards author, and an awards judge. So let me introduce the team and we'll walk you through who they are and we'll get cracking. First of all, we've got Owen Catto. Owen, many of you will know, is a highly experienced strategic and creative advisor. He partners with leading leaders in businesses as well as agencies in particular to unlock growth by helping them define their positioning and their value proposition. I think we've got one of his clients on the call today, I just noticed. Over the years, Owen has written winning submissions for both his own agencies and as a consultant on behalf of numerous agency partners. So he is the author and recipient of awards over the years. We then have Laura Perry, who is Head of Growth at Tangerine Communications. For those that know Tangerine, they're a leading communications, PR and social agency based up in lovely Manchester. And she's responsible for new business and marketing within Tangerine. In 2024, Tangerine was shortlisted for 24 industry leading awards, winning 12, which is a pretty good win rate, including Campaign Independent Agency of the Year and WARC Award for Effectiveness. So two great awards. Many congratulations. Rick Rodriguez is Director of Growth at Health Era, and he's also an awards judge. So he's our token client on today's call. Thank you very much, Rick, for giving us your time. And he draws an experience from startups, corporate technology, and agency worlds. He's worked very much on the insight side of the business, and he has expertise working with FTSE 250s and everyday household names, as well as New York Stock Exchange listed technology companies and globally recognized media agencies. For the new agencies on today's call, don't bombard him afterwards with we'd love to have a conversation. If you want to speak to Rick, just come via me and I'll make introductions. He's a recently exited founder and he's currently leading growth and marketing opportunities and development at Healthera, and they're on a mission to make medicine more accessible for all. And finally, we have Alex Slade, who's the events organizer and operations director at Don't Panic, a leading events specialist agency known for delivering world-class even awards ceremonies and awards programs. They have something like 30 different programs a year covering most aspects of marketing delivery. She's worked in the awards industry for 10 years and oversees business operations alongside sponsorship and partner collaborations. So, great lineup. We have the experts. So I'm going to get cracking, really. If you don't mind, Laura, I'm going to ask you the first question, which is, why do awards matter?
I think it's a very good question and really good one to start with, because I mean, I had this conversation the other week with somebody and they're like, oh, we don't really do awards anymore. It doesn't matter. And I think you can get so stuck in the day to day and do a really good job for your clients. But you need to shout about that because, I mean, one of our biggest clients is Specsavers and we've worked with them for 5 years, but it's only since we started really entering awards for them that people have started to recognize that we are Specsavers social media agency. You've got to start associating yourself with the brands that you work with if you want to attract more brands like that to work with moving forwards. And you don't even need to win the awards either. Just being shortlisted in the awards, getting your name alongside those brands will attract like-minded brands. And not only that, but it's been incredibly powerful for us from an organic growth perspective as well, because for the same reasons, your clients get very stuck in the day-to-day. It's very good to do just get the job done and do it really well. But by helping them shout about the work that they do, you help raise their internal profiles within a business and you also raise your own. So, for example, one of our clients is Essity, but we did a really great campaign with them last year, Vaginas Uncensored for Bodyform. That work was one of the ones that got the Walk Effectiveness Award, which is the Cannes Lion Award for Effectiveness. It's by starting to get recognition for the work that you do that has helped us grow the business within Essity. So we're now working with Tenor and a couple of other brands as well. So, it's really powerful from both organic and new business.
Okay. Rick, as a client and a judge, I mean, Do you care about awards? I mean, obviously, you go to the extent that you actually judge these things, but as a client, when you're looking for an agency, how important is it to you that you're working with an award-winning agency?
So I think definitely coming at it from the startup world, the scale-up world where I am now, you have limited budgets. So it can be useful in terms of identifying the quality of smaller players, because again, you're not going to work with the Dentsus and the WPPs of the world because you simply can't afford it. So it does help you understand, the sorts of things this agency would be good at, and help you prioritize who you work with and where you spend that all important budget. So you're working with a much larger company. It opens your eyes to other agencies that are out there that perhaps you wouldn't normally think of. Again, if you're working with a FTSE 100 for intents purposes, you know who the big agencies are, you know who can help you at the global scale, but you might not realize that landscape has changed. And instead of going for one of the multinational media agencies that have top five, you might realize there is an independent agency that can support you across the 20 markets that you need to operate. But you wouldn't have thought about it unless you looked at particular award entries, particular categories, and see how it grows. In terms of how important is it internally, though, as in do we care about awards? It's a great way to help your team receive the recognition they deserve, and it's an additional perk that you can look at. So I do always encourage friends of mine that are client side to support their agencies, because that helps create a really great relationship between the client and agency, which I think is really important, but also because as a team, if you enter an award, it's almost like an additional perk that you can offer as part of HR. It's recognition that the team always want, but you can't always give as a client because it's a slightly different dynamic.
Okay, thank you. Can I come back to you, Laura? I mean, have you got an example of where by winning an award, it actually generated an opportunity for a new piece of business with a prospect?
Yeah, we've had multiple actually. So as I mentioned, like we're Specsavers social media agency, and because Specsavers do social really well, people are on the lookout for who is Specsavers social media agency, and we've had people watch the Drum Awards live, for example, just to find out who does Specsavers social, and off the back of that had a lead in, which led to a pitch, which we're still waiting for the response on. But it genuinely does work. We didn't even need to win the award. In fact, I think we didn't win the award. I think we actually got bronze, but it was the shortlist which got us the recognition for that particular one. So it is incredibly powerful, and that's just one instance. We've had that number of times. The other reason that it works really well as well is because if you enter quite a lot of awards in the right categories, you'll get on, say, ranking lists for things. So now we've just been put forward. The Drum published their agency rankings globally. We're number 4 in terms of most awarded agencies globally in terms of independent agencies, which again, to your point, Rick, if you're looking for an agency that you might not have considered, suddenly we might come on your radar. We do get a lot of people saying to us, oh, I saw you on the top 50 list, or I saw you on this list. And that's how people are coming through to us. We might not be the right agency for them every time, but we're definitely starting to get more of the right kind of leads coming through to us and having more of the right kind of conversations.
Thank you very much. I mean, that makes a huge amount of sense. Owen, when you are developing an award submission on behalf of another agency, or indeed as you have done for your own agencies in the past, how do you make sure the award entry stands out? I mean, are there common mistakes agencies should avoid?
Yeah, it's a good question. I suppose the first thing is quite simple, but clarity. I think being very, very clear, why we're going for it, why we think the submission has a chance of ticking the right boxes. Certainly, I don't think waffle helps. I think cookie cutter kind of boilerplate responses are very easy to see through, and you'll get lost. Um, I, I generally like, and I've done some work with Laura and the team at Tangerine. You need to kind of have a tone of voice. It needs to be a reflection of you as an organisation. So whatever that might be, is it punchy? Is it got a bit of humor to it? Does it reflect how you as a business kind of tick? And that can really come through in language. And that also links through to something that I'm unsurprisingly very keen on, which is having a clear agency through line. This is why we're the right agency. This is our point of view. This is our purpose. And sort of talking back to that from submission start through to beats that you hit throughout the entry, I think is very important. So I guess sort of being clear, don't waffle, and then having some sort of differentiated point of view that can run as a through line through the entry.
Thank you. Alex, I mean, you organise, I think, something like 30 different awards around the world. What are the kind of trends within awards at the moment? What particular categories or channels are very much in the ascendance in terms of award entries?
With the UK Social Media Awards, we've definitely seen growth in this year. A lot of our agency categories are always our big entrants, best agencies to work for, best large agency. So we are seeing a trend in those increasing in entries.
Okay. So let's get back to basics then and kind of go back to what your awards strategy should be and kind of what's the starting point in selecting the sort of awards that you want to enter, Laura? Where do you start?
I think you do have to be strategic. I think that's when awards start becoming vanity metrics if you're not strategic with it, and you can end up spending a lot of money in the wrong places. Like with a new biz strategy, like who are the clients that you want to attract? Where are they? If you're a local regional agency, enter local regional awards and start to get fame in that area. If you're very sector specific, look at the sector specific awards and start to get fame in those areas. For example, like when Rick said, like, you know, if you're an agent, if you're a client looking for an agency and suddenly a name keeps popping up in the space where you're looking, you are going to start to take notice of them. That we are strategic with the awards that we enter. We don't enter some, and I'll get emails from like the board saying, why aren't we shortlisted for this? I'm like, we didn't enter it. And it was a strategic decision. But if you've got that strategy, it helps you, you know, combat those questions as well that you might get from above, might get from your client. You know, we don't enter regional awards at Tangerine because our clients are national and international, and that's a decision we took a long time ago. So, you know, again, other agencies probably shouldn't enter national awards for the opposite reason. But it is all just about getting awareness with your clients and consideration in the right spaces.
Okay, so if you're looking to extend from being a regional agency to a national or international agency, you know, there's a top tip there, which is, you know, look for awards that are going to profile your business and build awareness of your business on a national or international stage. In terms of how much should agencies actually spend on awards entries? I mean, do you have a set budget? Do you sit down at the start of the year and work out what percentage of your revenue is going into marketing, and in turn, what will be used for awards entries?
That's a good question. I wish I could pull it apart from my marketing budget because it's such a big cost. And this is another factor that you have to take into play as an independent agency competing against networks that have much bigger budgets. Also, being an agency based in Manchester, everything costs 2-3 times as much because all the award ceremonies tend to be London focused. So my budget instantly is bigger from that perspective. So they're all things that you need to take into account. For example, like, do I even need to attend the award ceremonies, but just entering it, how do I maximize that once I've got it? At the moment, I would say about 40-50% of my overall marketing budget is awards. But that includes attendance as well, which I'm trying to pull apart from it. I would like it to be less, but they are playing such a huge role in our strategy at the moment that we're not, you know, because we're still trying to break away from being we're a national agency that operates at a national scale. So there's a big awareness job for us to do. So again, hopefully my marketing budget gets bigger so that proportion becomes smaller.
It's clearly working for you. I mean, that's evidenced by obviously the success you've had in the last 12 months. Rick, can I come back to you in terms of kind of the whole judging side of it? You know, the starting point in terms of, I don't know how many awards that you get invited to judge on an annual basis, but can you give us some idea of kind of the time commitment and the process you typically go through?
Yeah, so I work a lot with the Don't Panic team. Huge fan of what they're doing. Highly recommend entering the awards they run. Really, really great process. I think I probably do between 5 and 10 a year at this point. Sometimes we've done more, sometimes we've done less. And then within that, we tend to judge around 20 to 40 entries, depending on the size of the category and sort of the size of the awards show. Similar like the UK Search, there'll be a lot of interest. It's been around for a long time and very respected in the space. So there'll be a lot more awards. Some of the newer awards, perhaps fewer, but more categories to judge. I would say that first things first, the time commitment is dependent on that. It's dependent on naturally how many awards you have. As a judge, the more categories you have, the arguably easier in some ways it is to judge in terms of the time commitment, because sometimes you find categories where there's only 1 or 2 entries, and that can create efficiencies. On the other hand, sometimes it doesn't help you, particularly if you've got categories that are completely different to each other and you have to almost get into a headspace. The headspace you're in to judge a best PPC agency of the year versus a highly specific digital PR campaign in a particular sector or region has a very different mindset, and you're looking for very different things. In terms of the process, a lot of the award companies these days, the people that run them from a judging side, help us as much as they can, and a lot of that comes down to how the entry forms are structured. And I think that works both ways, in that people that enter awards get the entry form, and it's quite the sort of criteria of each of the sections you are asked to respond to are quite clear, and they're clear so that as a judge, it's actually really easy for us to then go, okay, this is all the information we need to know about the company's objectives. And so actually we can focus on that, and we don't need to think about it in other areas of the award entry, because then it's all there, and then you follow it through, and that can be quite a formulaic process. Sometimes, and look, what I would say is, ideally we'd spend as much time as we possibly can on awards. We'd spend days on it if we really could. The reality is that a lot of us are doing this pro bono. A lot of us are giving this time up to on top of our day jobs, and so we just can't spend 3 or 4 days marking entries. People would tend to spend a day to 2. I generally spend a day, depending on the size of the award. And it means that we have to be really selective in terms of what we believe, what we don't believe, what we trust, and what we choose to explore. Again, we'd love to be rigorous in terms of every single component, every single piece of metric or data that comes through to us. The reality is, either we don't have the resources to do that in terms of time, or we don't have the means. So if something doesn't feel right, naturally we will investigate, and we will go as far as we can to ascertain the truth on that. But generally speaking, if something aligns with our expertise or experience of running similar campaigns or activations, we will trust in the information. But that kind of comes back to a separate point on process, and I won't waffle too much on it, which is, yes, the results matter, but a lot of the time you're entering an award to show the work that you've done as much as the outcome of those awards. And a lot of time people spend a lot of focus on, here's the results section, and you get a really detailed results section, but the piece of work that shows us how you went about the work, or the sort of activations you ran, and the even down to the kind of strategic thinking that came into that. Speak to Owen's point about having a through line. Very, very rarely is that something that we see, and you end up with these very bloated results section. A lot of award shows, or a lot of the judging process is actually set up so that you can't just win an award based on the results alone. You have to give us detail in the process, and if you don't give us detail, that may be why you actually don't win the award. And we put a lot more emphasis on the process in its entirety of work from start to finish, with results being a part of it, than we do on just the results itself. I'll kind of close there. Start waffling.
No, it's not at all. That's really insightful. I mean, Alex, across all of your awards, do you work exclusively with external judges? In other words, you don't use agencies and heads of agencies or senior people within the agency side to judge awards. Is it always clients?
Yeah, it's always clients, brand side judges or consultants, simply because it's agencies that enter our awards. So we often find that other agencies won't feel comfortable entering their work if they think their competitor could potentially be reading it. So yeah, predominantly, and yeah, we work with all external. So panels of judges can be from anything from 100 on the search awards, like Rick was saying, they're very well established. We get hundreds and hundreds of entries, so we need plenty of judges on there. And yeah, we're always kind of looking to refresh and bring in new thought leaders. So it's definitely opportunity there.
Is it difficult finding clients to be able to give the time to judge these awards?
It can be difficult because, like Rick was saying, a lot of the work that is done in everyone's own in their own time. And sometimes you can be scoring up to 30 entries, and particularly for new judges who might not have done it before, the process will take a lot longer. We try to give plenty of time in terms of timelines to get the work done. But yeah, it can be hard because of time commitments for sure. The way our judging works, so we do a pre-scoring stage. So they'll get about 3 or 4 weeks to pre-score the entries remotely, and then we'll do a judging session where all the judges will join a call and we'll discuss everything collaboratively, and that's kind of how our process works. But yeah, I think it's a really good opportunity for anyone who is looking to be involved in judging. I'm sure a lot of the judges do get involved because it is a huge learning exercise. Obviously, you're getting insights into trends and innovations and seeing what's going on in the industry. But it's also a great opportunity for networking because we invite all of our judges to attend our awards and present on the evening as well, which is a great opportunity to meet other judges and other people in the room who've been shortlisted.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I mean, you were saying earlier on, Laura, that you basically entered 24 awards last year. That's a lot of work. I mean, how do you sort of shoulder that? How do you sort of divide the work internally in terms of deciding who's going to be responsible for writing the awards entry? Or do you take 2 or 3 campaigns that you know have a chance of actually success and then modify your entry according to the particular award you're entering for and use the same case histories across each?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Again, you have to be really strategic and look at what you're trying to achieve. So last year and this year, we have selected a hero piece of work that we're going to be submitting pretty much everywhere. And there are other pieces of work that we could probably submit in those categories, but we'd potentially just be putting ourselves up against ourselves then. And it's a shame because some of that work is great work, but we have to kind of back a horse, I guess, and look at where we're going to get the most opportunities. What's the biggest fame driving client? Are the thought leadership stops with that piece of work? What are the other opportunities for amplification with it? And that's how we've backed these particular pieces of work. So last year it was our Vaginas Uncensored campaign for Bodyform. This year it will be our Best Work Worst Team campaign for Specsavers. And it doesn't mean that we won't enter awards for the other piece of work, but we need to be more strategic. So, for example, like if you're looking to expand, I don't know, a crisis comms offering within the business, then is there a piece of work that you could use to, enter specific awards for that? Likewise, if you want to expand your social media offering, TikTok awards, is that piece of work that maybe would have entered a content category actually more appropriate to then go into a TikTok category or an influencer category? It's just being strategic with it. And then it still enables the team to have their work recognised, the other clients to have their work recognised, but you're not cannibalising your efforts in key categories or key awards, so to speak.
So much like the Oscars, then, if you've got a successful movie, it's going to do well at the Golden Globes and BAFTA, and fingers crossed for the Oscars themselves. You can see that trend, I guess, and you're going to come up against the same competitors who presumably are taking a similar strategic view to yourself. So it could well be that you come up against another PR agency or a social agency with a strong entry, and you'll see them popping up at the awards that you enter using the same or similar submissions.
Yeah, and you do have to adapt for every award entry as well, because I realised I didn't answer that part of the question. We've worked really closely with Owen, as you know, to help us write, say, for example, let's call it the original, and then we adapt it from there. Like once we've got the tone of voice, the narrative right, and then we'll adapt it for different award entries. It is time consuming. It is incredibly time consuming. And I think what you shouldn't forget is it's not a junior job to do either. It is a really strategic job, and you need to make sure you put time aside to do it at a senior level to get it right. Otherwise, you're just hemorrhaging money, when it could be a really valuable part of your new biz or organic growth strategy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been on the recipient end of kind of being an awards judge over the years a few times, and you can spot straight away where the intern or a young exec has been given the opportunity of doing the awards, and it's terribly unfair on them. Frankly, as a net result of which, very rarely do you actually get a strong submission. I mean, when you're basically setting out then to kind of do this kind of, I guess, baseline awards entry, the thing from which Laura will then adapt and develop their storyline. How do you go about that, and what's going through your head when you're thinking about what judges are looking for?
Sure. I mean, I'll step back slightly. The first thing you've got to do is be really honest with yourselves about what work might win and why. I think that, I've been in agency land and put submissions in, and I've also been a judge too. And you've got to be pretty confident this has got a chance of winning. And I think I've seen quite a few submissions where the agency has loved the work, it's fantastic, but you know what? This was never different from anything else. It was just it was a lovely bit of work, but it wasn't award winning. And that, I think, is an important starting point. And using a third party or someone who can provide a bit of objectivity can help with that, because as Laura says, this is an investment, and it's dead money if you're not investing correctly. So it's worthwhile doing properly. With that in mind, I would always look at the criteria and start to go, okay, well, what are the beats we've got to hit? I've used that phrase before, but I think it is important. What's someone like Rick looking for in this response? And can we justify our response and our work to support that entry? And then quite often it's how do you frame it in the best way to tick the boxes that need to be ticked? And I think that is okay. It's okay to take a piece of work and say, actually, we can really amplify this aspect of it because it's got an opportunity to really prove point X or Y that the category is looking for. So I think there is an objectivity that you can rely on from a third party, and then that ability to see the potential in work. So it's also looking at it going, do you know what, this has got the potential to go here, here, and here, and here's how I recommend we tell that story. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And I just wonder, given the time lag between actually entering an award and having the submission written, what comes first? Did you kind of have to sit down, Laura, and actually say, right, these are the, first of all, this is our best work that's got half a chance of winning an award. And then secondly, based upon this work, these are the awards that we should enter, because we have the best chance of success in those categories. And as you said earlier on, it's about pushing your strategic objective of demonstrating a particular service that you might offer. You know, it could be, for example, that you were seen as a purist PR and comms agency, and now obviously you're a significant player in the social space. But in doing that, I guess there's always a danger that you have to sometimes have to actually basically put your name down for the awards before you've actually got a baseline awards that you believe has got half a chance of success, or do you always have that first?
We normally always have it first. Sometimes it's last minute when we realise that we're actually going to be able to enter something because for example, like we might have a really good piece of work, but we know that we haven't got the results against the objectives as much as we'd like. So obviously we're a PR and social agency. We might have really good coverage, but we haven't been able to attribute that to business impact at this point in time. So for example, our Best Worst Team campaign that I just spoke about, we entered that into the drum with the mid-campaign results. We actually won gold still. We've now had the full campaign results, and we've updated all the entries for that particular set of awards. And we might find the same with other campaigns. So Iceland is one where or the Tenor, another recent one, where we've just had to try and we wouldn't enter unless we could attribute it to what business impact this has had. That's often harder to get, but we'll have the entry ready to go. So that as soon as it is there, we can drop it in and get it out. But yeah, sometimes it might just sit there and we know that without it, it's not worth putting in, and it is just wasted time writing it, but you've got to have it ready to go. We'd never put ourselves forward if we didn't have it. Just again, it would just be a waste of money.
It's like selecting, I guess, to pitch or to run on a pitch. Same criteria applies, doesn't it? You go through that. What chance have we got success and so on? I mean, you're a sophisticated agency, a large agency. You've got some decent resources there. For smaller agencies, it can be quite difficult because, as you say, it's time consuming and it's expensive. But the same criteria should be applied because this is a great way to differentiate your proposition and build awareness of what you do and get your name out there. Rick, when you are judging awards, are you conscious of the fact that some of the agencies that you are reviewing here are very small entities? And do you tend to migrate just to the larger ones, or do you judge it on the merit of the actual entry?
So I think the first thing I'd say is a lot of awards will split out large and small. And so immediately, if you're dealing between large and small, you can enter the small category with a certain mentality that you're dealing with people that aren't going to have infinite resources and apply the same level of like the appropriate level of expectation to the results or the size of the campaign that matters. I have to say, and again, every judge I speak to has a different process and a different mentality around this, but I'll speak to my own as that's all I can do today. I don't really care whether an agency or a company is big or small. I've seen big agencies represent small clients and win. I've seen small agencies represent big clients and win. And to me, I kind of always bring it back to the very first thing I saw in my first response was the actual work and the process that you took in completing and getting to the outcome is as important to me as the results that you get. And actually, that's the more important part, because a small agency can do something that's super cool and super innovative and gets to the key core of a client's problem and deliver a great outcome. The results might not be ultimately millions and millions of pounds in revenue or, you know, huge lifts in unprompted brand recall, but it can still be proportionate to the work they've done. And actually, the work is the more interesting part. So in that instance, firstly, I would always recommend smaller agencies do enter awards. There is as much chance for a smaller entry entering a category as a big entry, particularly when it's a particular vertical or channel award. Doesn't matter if you've got 20 staff working it or it's you and a couple of freelancers, if the work is really good. And also, I think a lot of the awards that I judge, they make it easy for judges in that they do separate for things like teams and best agency awards. They separate them into large and small, because again, like, the resources of a smaller agency aren't going to be able to compete with a larger agency, and sometimes that does matter. One point I guess I would love to pick up on that I think Owen mentioned, and I think is really important, is actually, regardless of whether you're small or large, that context of like the quality or the ultimate like worthiness of an award to win is really important. And I think large or a small agency can have that, but being really mindful of what everyone else around you is doing is great. The amount of awards that I judge that are in the sort of best agency for X category that talk about working from home policies, D&I, sustainability, as if it's this brand new innovative thing. Like, everybody is doing it, and all you need to do is to go to any of these agencies' websites and you'd be able to figure that out. As in, almost treat some things as table stakes. What's important, and why I say that's really important, is because if everyone's doing it, yeah, it might be something that you've invested in, you're really proud of, but why are you doing it? And why are you doing it in a way that is exciting, innovative, and different? That is an approach point as opposed to a resources point. Okay, the resources might be tied to it, but my reason I say this again is a smaller agency can do something really interesting with sustainability as much as a larger agency can do. But you've got to assume that everyone is doing something. So just having that as a tick box exercise in and of itself isn't something that I would consider award-winning worthy.
And are there therefore of fashion and trends within awards that kind of judges are kind of looking out for? Are there buzzwords, or, as you say, sustainability obviously is a kind of an obvious one?
There absolutely are, and you do see the kind of topic du jour and the sort of wider conversation entering into awards. I think I'm all for agencies doing things that are innovative and really interesting. In fact, that's why we're here. That's why we want to judge these awards. What I think you have to separate, if you are going to use a buzzword or you are going to use something that's kind of more topical, is exactly how you as an agency use that to your advantage. So, for example, AI is massive right now. Everyone is using AI, whether that's through automated bid strategies and the complexity around that, through to writing content. The fact that you use ChatGPT to create an article that may have had some results in and of itself isn't innovative, because everyone is doing that. What's more interesting is, what prompts did you use to get to that article, and how did you qualify that article to create the results? So my point is, just using the buzzwords in that instance is interesting. It certainly it shows that as an agency you are into the kind of trends, the innovations, you are on the pulse for all intents and purposes. But a lot of the work judges will do is to separate the kind of buzzwords from the actual substance of how you've gone about it. So, short answer, yes, you do see trends. Yes, you do see a lot of agencies use words that they hope carry favor, but actually our job as judges is to dissect that and try and understand, what does it actually mean for the entry.
Presumably you can also spot if they're using AI to actually write the entries.
You can, but again, like, that's less of an, like, if it helps agencies get the, like, tell the story in a way that perhaps they might not be able to recognize, or it gives them additional ideas, and it makes my job as a judge easier because it summarizes things that perhaps agencies may tend to do in a more verbose way. That can be a really helpful thing. So the fact that agencies that are using AI to write awards and the information is 60% false, but it sounds good, like, we'll spot that very quickly as we start to figure out, well, okay, that doesn't make sense, as these things together don't equal this outcome. But using it to help you tailor your entry can be useful if you don't have the ability or the resources to work with someone like Owen, who absolutely can help you in these instances as well, and probably is better suited to it, if I'm really honest. It can be useful, but certainly if you're using it to kind of come up with ideas for things that might have happened and perhaps sound good, we really strongly advise that we don't do that, because again, we will always give an award the time and effort to dissect it if we think something doesn't feel quite right.
Okay, thank you. Lots of questions, which is great. One here from Andrew. This is for you, Laura. When you enter a hero piece in too many categories, do you craft it specifically for each category?
Yes and no. It depends what the categories are. Some you can tweak because they're quite similar, but others might say, for example, one might be a piece about you might enter it into a content award piece, but then the next piece might be about outstanding results evaluation and measurement, for example, and so you would have to adapt it. So again, you just really got to look at, you've got to be really strategic with it. That's why it isn't a vanity metrics game. You've got to be strategic what you're trying to achieve. If you really want to win in a measurement category and demonstrate effectiveness, then you're going to have to write an award entry that aligns with that. You can't just submit the same piece that you did for a creative content piece award, even if it's the same piece of work.
It makes sense. A couple of questions from Joe Rogers. It says, is it worth small agencies going for large awards like the Drum, or do the larger, better known agencies generally win?
I can take this if that's helpful. I think you need to be questioning, do you want to win in that category? It would be my question, because to Rick's point, it'll be on the quality of the work, and you may win in that category, but if your client or prospective client base don't care about the Drum or aren't looking, then you're just shouting at the wrong audience. So yeah, it'd be great winning the Drum Agency of the Award, but if that's not where your client base are, then again, it's just a wasted opportunity. Would you be better placed entering a regional set of awards where you're really going to stand out and be, a big fish in a smaller pond? So again, it's just about, I sound like a broken record, but having a really robust strategy in place, knowing where your audience are and making sure your award strategy aligns with that. I don't know if you guys would agree.
I'll add to it. Yeah, I think if those things align, it is worth going for, and you think it is an award you want to go for, then I would come back to being really honest with yourselves about, is this work good enough? And then if it is, then all the things we've just talked about apply. Then you have a chance. Then Rick will judge it in the fair way he's described. But you've got to make sure that the work is going to absolutely cut through, and you have the ability to win it. But if you do think you can, and you do think it aligns with your strategic objectives, then go for it. Absolutely. But it could cost you some money, so you've got to be prepared for that.
I'll absolutely underline that. All for smaller agencies entering bigger awards and bigger categories. But I would always be realistic about your chances of winning. If you're entering an international X category and you are international because you're doing 2 markets and you're up against companies across 100 markets, the likelihood is that those companies are going to showcase work that they can do at scale where that actually helps them in that category. Whereas if you've got something that is a really cool piece of automation you set up for, meta ads, and ultimately the results are great proportionate to the budget into that, because actually you might find that is the piece of innovation we're looking for. And even though the results might be thousands as opposed to hundreds of thousands of pounds of return, that doesn't matter, because the work is also really interesting. So it's just having a really good awareness of, is the thing that we're trying to enter genuinely innovative in proportion to what we're trying to, what the category's for and what we're trying to achieve. And then just a good kind of awareness of, okay, 2 markets is not necessarily an international campaign, but a cool automation might be enough to win a Meta Focus Award.
Particularly if it's Wales and England. The other thought I've got is that the idea of actually entering awards within the category that your client works in. For example, if they're a retail product and grocer, if they are working in the travel industry, there's a whole range of different travel awards. There's incremental value there if you want to be seen to be a specialist, I guess. And I also, from a client point of view, they tend to love that sort of thing. So in terms of building relationships and deepening your relationships with your clients, those can be quite helpful. Thoughts?
We enter quite a lot of category-specific awards, for example, like the Grocer Construction Marketing Award for our B2B clients. And exactly to your point, clients love it because it's the world that they know and they operate in day to day. But again, it just starts to build your credentials in areas where you want to gain expertise. Again, if you want to break into a new market, then look at those types of awards to try and get recognition in those areas, because it will start to appeal to people, particularly if you're going in for tenders and things like that. Really helps.
And also, speak to that from the client side. for example, if you're a startup scale up and you're looking for funding, being able to go in and talk about your kind of proof points of traction within market and product market fit, being able to show industry specific or vertical specific awards and progress, even if it's delivered through your agency for a category that is important to you, perhaps not directly the thing you're doing, it still helps with like validating that as an investment. So there are reasons that a client might want to do it that are very similar to the reasons an agency might want to do it. So I think that is also an important point. It's definitely a space for them.
That's a really important point, actually. Thank you. ROI. Do you track ROI on awards entries versus revenue gained as a result, or is that too sophisticated?
Look at success rate, but I'd like to, I guess is probably my answer. Probably something that I'd like to work towards, but currently, no, we more look at the success rate and track kind of, leads coming in off the back of awareness that comes in via awards, really. Because it might not be direct, but it might happen like 2 or 3 stages down the line. So it is quite hard to track from that perspective.
I guess also speaking to them from the marketer's perspective and having been agency side, like it's almost like the same question: would you track the direct revenue results from a TV ad? It's the same sort of question. It has an impact on how people perceive you and their mental availability when it comes to actually wanting to work with you down the line. But you wouldn't track it on a revenue per revenue basis. You look at the impact on how that might improve brand recall. Same with awards. Reputational capital through awards is really important. It might be that you don't get immediate calls straight after, and so the direct ROI might not be there. But it might be that you've got a bigger name that's looking for a smaller company that they want to work with, that they sort of start to track you over a period of time. A lot of the time for large companies, RFPs don't come out of nowhere and they suddenly just need a new agency. They start the process 6 months in advance. They create their criteria. And actually, if you happen to be in an award show that they're tracking or an entry that they've looked at, you might be even influencing the criteria that then ultimately results in your success further down the line without even realizing it. So like even if you could track it on a quid pro quo basis, I'm not sure. In the same way that I've been in the room with many a CMO talking about the impact of like upper funnel media, that tracking it on a direct ROI basis, revenue gains is perhaps the best way to look at it.
That's the point, isn't it? It's top of funnel, isn't it? It's top of funnel. It's brand building rather than PPC at the bottom end of the funnel. Okay, that's helpful.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah, please.
So I think to the point about sort of secondary effects and not necessarily directly attributable value, the internal culture piece that Laura mentioned earlier is really, really important. Helping with retention and the value of that. One thing we didn't talk about with people is also attraction of talent. So profile matters for client, but I've seen it's very, very important that the outside world sees and talent sees that, actually they're award winning, they're an interesting business, they're going somewhere, I want to come and work for them, and it's a reflection of the culture and all the other good bits. So I do think that the ROI is hard to track. I would agree with Rick. But I think you should also look at people.
Yeah, well, go back to that, Owen. You'll remember a time where there was a direct correlation between the number of awards a creative team in the old days would actually win and the salaries that they would enjoy, or the expectations in terms of salary increases. I don't know whether that's still the case. Do you see that, Laura?
It's funny you mention it, because I had a meeting this morning with somebody, and I can't mention the agency, but they actually said that one agency still operates on that model. Like your progress with an agency is still based on the amount of awards that you win, which I find a little bit archaic, because obviously but equally, it obviously still really matters to people, which must demonstrate how effective awards are for that particular agency. So it does matter. If we go back to the original question.
There's loads of questions coming in. I know we're into the last quarter of an hour now. We're probably going to get around to answering all of them. So what I'm going to do is ask Tracer to record them, and then we can come back to some of these if we don't get to the end. One thing I want to raise, and this is a dubious thing, so I'm going to raise it like a bit of controversy at this time of the call, is that there was a trend within agencies, particularly creative agencies, to develop an advertising idea or a creative concept or a piece of work or a PR stunt that actually only happened once, or was put in the Bradford Bugle, or actually hidden somewhere in order to be able to actually enter it for an award, rather than actually something that was perhaps mainstream and may have not got the client's approval. Who knows? Do we see much of that? Alex, do you witness that with agencies trying to basically put in awards fodder?
No, actually, I've not witnessed it. I know when we spoke, Stephen, it was, to be honest, the first time I've really heard of that. But it seems to be a thing that has happened. Not whenever I've judged a judging session, it's never been raised. So no, I haven't witnessed it. I don't know about you, Rick, if you've come across it.
I think the thing you see more often than not is not sort of awards fodder and like awards for the sake of winning awards, but a lot of the time what you do see is that agencies submit awards without not that they don't mention the client. The client might be a point of public record, but they then can't go into any detail around results, budgets, metrics, and those sorts of things. And it's always vague percentages. The bottom line is it's always better to go into an award entry with your client in support of it, because then you can share the detail. And again, as judges, if we have to go on percentages, we are more likely to look into the work and try and analyze and understand what that might have meant. Again, 2 is a 100% increase on 1. £2 is not going to be something that potentially wins you an award, but you could frame that as a 100% increase year on year on X, Y, and Z. My point is, the more specific you are, it doesn't have to be huge volumes. It doesn't have to be like over £1 million generated, but the more specific and the more like numbers you can put to your metrics, the better. And a lot to say, coming back to the point, we don't see awards fodder as much as perhaps it used to be the case, but we do see entries that come in without client support, and they never really tend to do that well compared to those that have it.
Stephen, in response to the question as well, I think there's probably that trend has died down a little bit, partly because people don't have the time or the money to go about that kind of type of work. I last came across it when I judged the MAAs, which must be like 15 years ago or something, with a piece of retail point of sale that was clearly only in one shop, and I had a big discussion about whether that counted as point of sale, but I haven't seen it for a long time. So I think it is probably a kind of outcome of current climate.
Okay, that's yes, it self defines itself, doesn't it? Nick Ban, saying he was a judge many years ago, and in those days you could write your own awards entry in any format you wanted. Naturally, the best design ones tended to actually win the awards. Has this all ended now, since we've now got sort of strict formats for uploading?
Yeah, I can answer this one. So, yeah, I think back in the day we would encourage people to be a little bit more creative with their entry forms, but what we found was, the main headings that the judges needed to score weren't included, so it was making it quite difficult for the judges to understand, well, how much am I marking them? All of our entries are scored between 1 to 10, so they'll have a different weight per question. And I think sometimes people are getting a little bit carried away with the designs. And then, like I said, judges just can't then score it. So it's just much easier. We always encourage just to use the entry form provided, focus on answering the question, getting everything right in the question. And, supporting documents as well is something worth mentioning is sometimes entrants will try and put too much information into the supporting documents, and obviously they're not scored. They are just to support whatever information you've put into the entry form. So it's quite important to I would say, focus on filling out the entry form as best you can, rather than trying to design anything too fancy.
I totally echo that. As a judge, you've got to remember we're seeing 40 entries and we're generally judging them in one sitting. So sometimes it helps to stand out. But again, the way that we mark and the way we score these entries, standing out isn't really the challenge a lot of the time. It's clarity of concept, making sure that you are like starting at your objectives, demonstrating how you achieved a piece of work, and then how that piece of work resulted in X outcomes, and then why you think that work is impressive or worthy of an award. And as Alex says, the scoring criteria follows that, whereby if you lose clarity because you've got a cool design, you actually lose points rather than gain points. We don't look at it and go, well, that one's really nicely designed, so therefore 10 out of 10. Like, that's not really how the marking criteria works these days.
Okay. We have got a piece of gold in the form of a link to an article listing all of the awards, both UK, European awards, that are worth your consideration, which Teresa's going to put into the chat box so that you can copy that and look at it at your leisure. But it's quite a useful piece of award. I'm also going to ask Alex to do the same for the Don't Panic Awards. Many of the Don't Panic Awards are listed in that, but there's also, I think, if you could send Alex through to Teresa a link to all of your awards, so that we can actually publish it after today's call.
Also, yeah, we have our 2025 calendar ready, so we can share that.
Okay, great. So two final questions. One is, awards events, classic. Then, the whole thought and the whole process of awards events, has evolved and changed. They were very much the kind of the black tie, the great opportunity to take the team out and celebrate with the clients by taking a table and having a great night out. That's changed a little bit, Alex. I mean, we still have some of those big events, but equally too, a lot of the times these days there are no big awards events.
I think the problem with attending awards events is the budget and bringing, your team along. I think people struggle to get the sign off. We definitely see it with our awards people, not all of them, but for some you'll see less ticket bookings. People aren't maybe going for the table to 10 that they used to, but I think there's so many different considerations. People, enter multiple awards, so it's maybe them having to pick which ones they're going to actually attend, along with all the other industry events that they're probably scheduled to go to in the year. So, yeah, I think there's probably a few factors as to why maybe people don't attend them as much.
And in general, Rick, I mean, you go to a few of these fairs over the years, and I know, Owen, you've attended quite a lot. Do you sense a change in the atmosphere in terms of how the events are scheduled and how they're executed, and equally to the attendees?
I don't think the attendees have changed. I think what has happened is they become the whole environment, and credit to the Don't Panic team who I attend sort of many awards events with, feel a lot more relaxed, which in my view makes for a much better and more enjoyable night. It means that people are more kind of interested in mingling and networking with each other, whereas I don't know, it used to feel a long time ago quite tribal. You had your agency, you had your team, and if you were a big team, you had the table, and you didn't really find people were talking as much. And again, everyone comes in black tie, and I get that there's a prestige and a thing around that, but I think the fact that people turn up, like people want to dress up for these events, but having to feel like they look a certain way, or having to adhere to a certain dress code, I don't think perhaps helped, or at least having seen the alternative where people can wear what they like, but actually use it as the occasion. It does create a far more kind of, as I say, relaxed environment. And at the end of the day, I think that's kind of more that kind of speaks to the zeitgeist of marketing. It's less big agencies kind of standing out and trying to fight with each other, and a lot of interagency collaboration. You hear a lot of conversations happening between teams where an agency does X but doesn't do Y, so they meet an agency that does Y, and then they're suddenly partnering and then entering awards together in the following year. Like that sounds like a pipe dream, but it actually happens now, which as someone that judges awards and kind of stays as part of this is for the community. I always see it as like giving back to the community that helped me achieve my career. Like, it's awesome to see. Like, it's really, really cool to see. So definitely sense a change, a positive change to more of a relaxed atmosphere.
Yeah, we kind of decided with the dress code thing, because I think back in the day, like a good few years ago, it was always black tie. But times have moved on. I think people just want to come and feel comfortable, dress to impress, take that however you like, really. We have people that do turn up in the black tie, ball gowns, and then we have some people that turn up with, suits and trainers, and it's just what it is. We're happy to welcome anyone.
I think the point you're making there, Rick, is that these are networking events and they should be taken, they're business opportunities, and absolutely right. And I do love the fact that actually the whole thing's a lot more relaxed these days, because it's interesting to, I think, particularly Gen Zs, they're not as comfortable sometimes in these kind of environments, and actually it's important that they actually get out and get given the opportunities to meet other people in different agencies. Right. Well, listen, we're coming to the end now. I just really wanted to thank our panel for all of their time, their insights this morning. Really, for me, my kind of key takeaways are: one, awards are strategic. They're really part of your agency's marketing effort, and you should view them as an opportunity. Two, they're not the exclusive of large agencies. Independent, smaller agencies of any size, any shape, and not just agencies, consultants, and within the pro services space, there's dozens of awards, should take the opportunity to actually look at what's out there. You need to be really selective about the awards that you go for and recognise you have half a chance. Getting an external perspective on that, and from somebody like an Owen, and there are other people out there who do this sort of thing, I think is important, and it stands you in better stead. And if you're going to put the awards entry in, you might as well write a good one. Look at the total cost. Be aware that obviously some of these awards, unfortunately, there is still a southern bias. Haymarket in particular just seem to kind of just look at agencies in the south and southeast, whereas Don't Panic are running national awards in major conurbations, and that's another important thing. Three, never forget, this is a great way to attract and retain talent as well as clients. So it really does celebrate the talent you have within your agencies. And there is a really positive cycle. You'll see some of the successful agencies in the last decade, how they basically won awards, attracted talent, won more awards, attracted more clients, and grown. There is a real strong correlation here. And don't be cynical. These things are important. And actually, there's real value in it. And I think what Rick has demonstrated to us all today is that these judges do actually go to a lot of effort to basically judge these awards, and that actually the people who are actually reviewing your work aren't your peers. They're the professionals. They're the clients that you're working for at the end of the day. And I think that's very, very important to remember. So that's it for now. We have a few little events coming up over the next week or so, which you're all welcome to come to. Our next Pimento event is scheduled for the let me see now, 26th of Feb. It's the BD Club, which is for, as the name would suggest, Business Development Club, and it's the power of the network and unlocking agency growth in 2025. For my sins, I'm going to be interviewed. I'm going to be in the chair, and firing the questions will be Paddy Woods. The next 6 p.m. club is being hosted by Small Films. It's on the 27th of February. It's in London. Again, if you are a member, obviously you will be aware of this. If you're a non-member and you'd like to attend, then please do drop a line to Teresa. And then the future of brand partnerships. So we're looking at actually the importance of brand partnerships. This is a client and agency event. It's going to be a webinar, and it's on the 5th of March. And again, you are welcome to attend. So that's it for now. With a minute to go, you can grab a coffee, use the bathroom before your next call. And thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great to see you all. Cheers. Bye-bye.